it could be hugely embarrassing for the SNP because potentially it means that we can't elect a First Minister for another month. Now, I mean, that would be leave Humza Yousaf in place. It would mean John Swinney and his new administration, to be formed in a bit of limbo, and just would be not just an embarrassment, it would be a big cost to the cash-strapped SNP who don't have any money at the moment.
Times Radio Breakfast.
Good morning, it's 7:35. It's a busy day coming up on Times Radio, the election station. Just to mention, at 10 o'clock Sunday morning with Kate McCann and Adam Bolton, they've got the Transport Secretary Mark Harper and Labour's National Campaign Coordinator Pat McFadden to respond to, well, I am going to say it, the results so far, because Salford City Council are hanging on in there till they give us their declaration at 5 o'clock today. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Anyway, I'll get over it at some point. Plus, the Scottish Labour leader, actually, Anna Sarwar, will be in good form. You'll find out why in just a moment. And the former US National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, all on Sunday morning with Kate and Adam from 10 o'clock.
If you have a digital subscription to the Times and the Sunday Times, you can go online now to the style section. Even if you've got a physical copy of the paper, you can do the same. Sheridan Smith has done an exclusive interview about her latest play, Closing Early. She says, I wanted to face my demons head on.
Lots more to come then on the local election results and the analysis of them. Right now we want to spend a few minutes reflecting on a Sunday Times poll which suggests Labour will overtake the SNP and become the dominant force in Scottish politics. Let's speak to our Scotland political correspondent John Boothman. Morning, John.
How are you doing, Callum?
Yeah, good, thank you. So what are the numbers?
The Sunday Times commissioned this poll after Humza Yousaf resigned. Basically, the poll shows Labour leading the SNP by 5 points, significantly the SNP dropping under 30% to 29% for the first time in what I don't know how many years. This is the worst poll share for the SNP since 2014 in the independence referendum. So a pretty big poll this morning. It's only a poll, of course. What it shows, though, is that Labour would win 28 seats at the general election. The SNP would win 15 seats at the general election. Also significantly, the Tories would increase their number of seats to 9 in Scotland from currently 6, and the Liberal Democrats would go up by 1.
It's interesting that. And so then, is that cause for concern for whoever becomes the new SNP leader and therefore First Minister, who at the moment, we understand the only candidate for that is John Swinney. So what does the poll tell us about what he's inheriting, I suppose?
It's a huge, huge challenge for John Swinney. Look, it's been a pretty disastrous, chaotic year under Humza Yousaf. Swinney's in there to steady the ship, to really bring back some kind of equilibrium into the SNP, stop that chaos, also to try and stem the tide of that drift away from the SNP right across the board. Let's see if he can do that. So yes, a big, big challenge for Swinney, and he's only got a few months to do that for the general election.
Yeah, so that's the key thing. So people have been sort of, over the course of this weekend, John, as we've been reporting on the local election results, somebody a couple of days ago was making the comparison perhaps between the Tories and the SNP by way of leadership changes, and whether the Tories could learn a lesson from the SNP in that it looks like it's going to be a John Swinney coronation for the SNP. But I was making the point that John Swinney's sort of primary focus will be the Holyrood election in 2026, presumably, rather than the general election, where they would still hope to do well, clearly, but arguably the focus has to be 2026. Do you agree with that? Is there how does John Swinney / whoever takes over the SNP, of course, how do they prioritise?
Whoever you talk to in the SNP recognises that the next general election is going to be a damage limitation election. They'd thought round about Christmas they'd kind of stemmed the tide of the drift in support to Labour, but that clearly wasn't the case under Humza Yousaf, and so it kept going. They had this great calamity last week. Just before Humza had gone, the polls were showing things moving again, only slightly, towards the Labour Party in particular, and this is the first main poll since then, and that shows that drift seems to have accelerated, the SNP dropping 3% in the last month now. As I say, Swinney's there to steady the ship, to bring a bit of stability, and it remains to be seen whether he can do that. You know, the other parallel between, I suppose, the UK government, Conservative government, and the SNP in Scotland is that, you know, it's not really a time, I don't think, for incumbents to do well. And for different reasons, both of them are going backwards.
We mentioned that Anna Sarwar's coming up on Times Radio later on this morning, John. So with a look to the Holyrood election in 2026, is it Anna Sarwar's for the taking, according to this polling?
Yeah, that Labour would have a slightly higher number of seats than the SNP for 2026 in this poll. Again, the significant thing, though, is that the unionist parties all added together would be more than the required number of MSPs to put Sarwar in. It would require either Sarwar to go as a minority in 2026, but with the tacit support possibly of the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. What it shows, though, again, is that SNP are going backwards. The Greens are not making any progress in that poll either, even if the SNP and the Greens, the pro-independence parties, could cobble something together in 2026.
And in the context of the SNP leadership, well, I was going to say contest. First of all, John, how clear are we if it is going to be a contest or if Swinney's going to walk this thing? And second of all, the polling is sort of reinforcing the message that became sort of baked in last year in terms of, first of all, Kate Forbes' appeal amongst the public versus the SNP membership, but actually that John Swinney and Kate Forbes are neck and neck when it comes to support from the general public on who would make the best First Minister.
Well, Kate Forbes is now back in the fold. We'll see what she's going to get in the coming days, perhaps, because, you know, there's a wee spanner maybe being thrown in the works. A retired conveyancing solicitor from Loch Lomond, a guy called Graham McCormick, is telling his supporters that he's actually managed to gather enough signatures for a challenge. Now, he won't win, Swinney will win, but it could be hugely embarrassing for the SNP because potentially it means that we can't elect a First Minister for another month. Now, I mean, that would leave Humza Yousaf in place. It would mean John Swinney and his new administration, you know, to be formed in a bit of limbo, and just would be not just an embarrassment, it would be a big cost to the cash-strapped SNP who don't have any money at the moment. So it would be it's a possibility. We were all trying to get a hold of Graham McCormick yesterday. He was resisting the temptation to talk. I know that some people in the party leadership are trying to talk him down from standing. So we'll just wait and see how that transpires over the next 24 hours. He needs to get 100 signatures from 20 branches in writing and deliver them to SNPHQ by lunchtime tomorrow.
John, thank you very much. Really good to speak to you. John Boothman, who is our Scotland political correspondent for the Times and the Sunday Times. So it's not a done deal for John Swinney yet, potentially.